Well, hi, good morning. Thanks so much for joining me here in my shop. It's October 3rd, and this is a bit of a prologue. I'm actually finished working on the radio today, and decided to shoot this sort of explanatory, somewhat of a warning video for those who might want to continue watching the rest of this video. I'm not too worried about tuning up this radio, getting the IF, all that kind of stuff that I've been struggling with. I'm really not too worried about success there. Success is there if I keep pressing on it. The problem is the disengaged tuning knob. That problem, which I spent a fair bit of time today analyzing, and that's what this video is about. It's going to be about the tuning knob. I've reached the point where I've already told the owner that it may be just unrepairable. And that's not a minor thing. If you can't tune a radio, the radio is not worth much. So it's a very disappointing situation to be in. Now, I know people are making comments on my videos, and as a matter of practice, I do not read them for very good reasons that I'm not going to go into right now. But I do get emails now and then from individuals who think they have a piece of gold that they want to share with me, particularly when I'm in a really tight spot. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that that's what happens after somebody watches this video where I go into great detail about how the little part works, and that's this part here. But what I'm really hunting for is not so much how it works, but how can I fix it? How can I accommodate the situation? What workaround can I do? What in heaven's name can I do so when you turn the tuning knob, the radio tunes? And I just have no solution for the problem. I think I know exactly what has gone wrong. I'm not completely sure. The idea of complete disassembly is really not on the table here. There's just so much that would have to be taken apart to get right out those parts, pull them all apart and examine them. That is just beyond reasonable. I certainly wouldn't want to attempt it. So I'm stuck where I'm stuck. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this radio aside. I have other projects that I need to get some work done on, and hope that somehow, through some miracle, a solution appears for the situation that I'm facing here with it. So thank you very much for having watched already some video on the tuning knob. This one, I think, really reveals everything I can reveal about it. So here we go. I hope you find it interesting anyway. And I forgot to mention that I took a shot at repairing one of my cameras here, a Microsoft camera that I used all the time with this little camera to get really close shots, which I wanted to use to get a close shot in here, but that's another hour and a half of effort that didn't work out. So I'm just being everything seems to be stacked against me. So that's it's a rough time in this shop. What am I doing in here? Anyway, here comes the video. Okay, I think I've shook off my depression from the failure to fix my camera, and part of that was I've ordered a new one. So a few days I'll have another camera that I can do really close-up shots. But for now we're going to have to rely on this guy. He's a little too big to get into spots. That's the problem with this particular camera. Let's take a look at what it's looking at, and then I'm going to tell you my 2 or 3 ideas here. So I'm diagnosing the problem with this radio as the yellow gear not moving far enough to the left. So it will somehow clutch against the part there you can barely see, that black part. Which I still, the part that's got me kind of frozen here, I still don't fully understand what's going on with that clutch, rubber clutch. I'm guessing that clutch operates when you depress one of the memory buttons far enough, or perhaps when you pull the memory button out that clutch will separate. So since the memory buttons are not an issue for Mr. K, the owner of this radio, as much as I'd like to snap my fingers and make them work, I'm not going to pay too much attention to it. So now what are the ideas? So when you look at the yellow piece there and you see below it the finger that's sticking in the groove, that guy right there. There's a couple things about that. One is that we don't quite see it on this angle. It appeared to me to be ever so slightly bent. Yeah, slightly is the word for that. Secondly, is there a chance that that slide rod still is not moving all the way to the left, that it's got another millimeter or two to go? Thirdly, is the slide rod actually restricting the yellow gear's movement to the left? In the slot there, let's see if now I don't really know what sort of condition it's in right now, but man, that's hard to see, isn't it? Oh, okay, I'm looking at my big screen TV. It's not so hard to see. So it appears to be pushing on it, trying to push the yellow gear to the left, which is what you would want. So one option is to bend that piece a little more. See how it's bent a little bit? It's just possible in the factory there is an adjustment made where somebody reaches in and finally bends that piece. Now that's tricky business because it's engaged with the yellow piece. I don't think the yellow piece will move very far. So to bend metal, you have to push it past its strain point, and it's very restricted here to try to do that. Let me see if I can just push this a little bit here. This doesn't really want to go anywhere. Turn the knob on the front. See, right now the yellow gear is turning, but nothing else is moving. The radio's not tuning, nothing is happening whatsoever. Now I'm going to push on it. I want to do this with some kind of do it with a bit of power here. Okay. So, hey, come on, camera, focus for me. Son of a gun. Okay, I'm gonna take over this camera's focus because it's not cooperating here. Okay, now let me. Well, the way this is, I can put an awful lot of pressure on that yellow gear by doing this, by twisting the screwdriver here. Whoops. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm turning the tuning wheel, and it is not tuning the radio. You know, the whole time I've had this receiver, I've noticed a whole bunch of play in this tuning wheel. Okay, so now I'm going to start applying pressure. It turned it a little bit. Okay, a little more pressure. It's trying. Of course, you know what's happening. The wheel is turning and driving my screwdriver out of place. So with that much pressure, it was actually tuning the radio. That's tuning the radio. That's a lot of pressure. I don't like that. So one of my scams here was to install a fairly strong spring, and I don't even know how I would do it. But get a spring wrapped right in the same area I had the screwdriver in here, pushing this thing. I'm not so sure it's going to work. I think I need to use my finger now to really feel the pressure. Using a tool like that, you don't really know what's happening. So getting my fingers in here. Okay, so currently no tuning. How am I going to do this? Because it's going to want to turn. And it can't turn because my fingers are all over it. No, I got my finger on the flywheel here, and that was stopping it. Okay, let's try it like that. and it tunes a little wee bit. It's tuning now in one direction. It's completely unreliable. What exactly has happened to this thing? Oh my gosh. So it's hard to believe the... so let's think about this. So they have that little slide bar there that pulls the yellow gear. If I were making this, would I make the yellow gear dependent upon a huge push from that bar, like a spring-loaded push from that bar? I don't think so. I don't think that's the arrangement. A little tiny finger in a slot on one side. I think I would have a heavier duty ring installed in there, pushing right on the back of it, so it's applying pressure on all the way, so it doesn't put a twist force into it. I would think this is much more like a transmission, like a shifter. It's simply moving the gear into the right place, and once it's in the right place, it will automatically do the thing. What is that right place? So if it's gonna pull it back, that's the extent of the pull. That's the whole thing right there. Now you can actually see that the gear is actually tipping a little bit. So I'm looking at the spring down here. The one that's down under here, this one right here. I'm watching that carefully as I operate the button here. And I'm asking myself, is that spring going anywhere? Or is it just the way the light is changing on it? Let me try another button here. I think the spring is moving. So what's that spring doing? How could I ever get in there anyway and do something about it? I've been doing this a lot. Been doing this a lot. See, this is why I spent an hour trying to fix a camera. Because I know that other camera would make it in here. I want to look straight down between the gear and the son of a gun. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I just don't see the easy solution here. It's just not coming, not showing up. It's a simple mechanism. What could happen to it? I don't know. What a tough time I'm having these days. Well, if I think about slipping strings, a lot of radios can have trouble with slipping strings. And that can be because the demand on the string, literally on the string, is too much because of bad lubrication in the mechanism that the string is trying to drive. It's just got too much work to do, and the string will slip, usually over the tuning knob where the string wraps around the tuning knob. This guy is 100% gear driven, except just on the outside here, and these strings are not involved in any way with what's going on. Could it be simply it's just demanding too much of the arrangement where the yellow gear mates up with that clutchy thing. It's just too much for the guy. Like that, I've sort of concluded or deduced that the yellow gear is supposed to. Let's think about this for a minute. There was play in a lot of play, this kind of play, in the tuning knob the whole time. Wait, it was giving me a lot of trouble. Interesting that the finger shaft is moving in a funny way too. Is it possible that this gear, yellow gear, really should be fused to the shaft? What we're seeing is proper operation right now. It's just the yellow gear is no longer fused to the shaft. How would they fuse it to a shaft like this? How can it be fused? It's supposed to slide back and forth on the shaft. It can't be fused. It must be loose, and then it must deliver the drive through a clutching mechanism, which we're having trouble getting a close look at. We must see the clutching mechanism more closely. I must fix that camera. Or gotta wait for the new camera to come. No, I must have some other solution here. Okay, let's see what we can get out of this image. So when I look down at that, I see the rubber clutch closed, and then I see the steel or whatever it is, aluminum plate, and then I see the yellow gear. And when I look at the bottom of the image, I can see the tuning gear. I can turn it here. And then you can see how the metal plate is affecting the tuning gear. It appears to be pushing on the tuning gear shaft, the knob gear shaft. Now that would be to kind of keep the gears from separating. So that would mean that if you push in the button, I would think, well, so what you're trying to, I got my finger depressing a button all the way right now. At no time does that clutch ever come apart. Well, what is the clutch actually clutching? So you can see the one side has the brass fitting on it. Here we can turn it around. There's a set screw. There's one set screw there. So that side of the rubber clutch is on the tuning shaft. What I'm calling the tuning shaft. That shaft turns, both the pointer moves and the tuning capacitor is being turned. They're locked together. They have to be locked together. And just beyond it, like to the left, is the metal plate, which you can see there is some clutch action there as I wiggle this back and forth, but not enough to really, not locking anything at all. I didn't spray any oil or anything down in this area. So okay, so where'd the play come from? How is it you can do this kind of thing before an engagement occurs? It seemed to be quite consistent, about this amount. Why would that be? Now you can see that metal plate is not rotating perfectly with the gear. You can see it's actually there it goes. Well, that would be part of the trick, wouldn't it? If the objective is to cause the yellow gear to push hard enough on that plate to cause a clutch action. But look at the clutching surface is just way down close to the shaft. Look at the rubber clutch, what they did to make a clutch there. A clutch for what again? Okay, so go back to that. So what if the idea is you pulled, when you push the button, you pull the yellow gear back slightly, and that causes the rubber clutch to separate. The whole thing goes. We can call it the yellow gear. In between is the a tricky way to spring load the yellow gear against the knob gear, and then you just need the slightest separation in the clutch mechanism, the actual rubber clutch mechanism, to make this whole thing work. But they don't seem to be connected in any way. Now you just saw the rubber clutch is closed, the whole unit spun. What would that matter if the whole unit spins? Mr. K told me when he gave me this that the buttons didn't appear to work. He wasn't much more specific than that. But it certainly does. You certainly do push them, everything tunes. It certainly is pulling things apart. It's just not, it's got to be the case that somehow the rubber clutch, the side towards the yellow gear, is supposed to be fixed to that yellow gear. Now, how could they do that? How would they do that? How would you ever do that? Would you just like it's a series of clutches there, and you're just hoping? That doesn't make sense, because if there's some dependency on a clutch action between the metal plate and the yellow gear, then what would you need that other big clutch for? Which is clearly a clutch, and there's no doubt about it. A clutch which never gets pulled apart. Okay, so if that whole theory holds true, that basically this whole thing should be the yellow gear, the metal plate, and the one side of the clutch should all be somehow bound together. How would you bind them together? With glue? It's not typical glue would be used. A lot of manufacturing issues with applying glue. It takes time to harden. The glue has to be applied exactly right. You've got a metal part in there you can't really glue to. So is there more to the structure that I can't see? For instance, you see how wide the shaft fitting is on the right. Is there something wide on the far side of that, on the left side of the metal plate, that should be sliding into the yellow gear, and that would carry the yellow gear's movement right, like lock it right through? So the metal plate actually has a large hole in the center of it. And the other weird thing too is if you're going to move that yellow gear and move the plate, you're putting a weird stress. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. So they designed it so the metal plate is flimsy enough that you can pull the yellow gear. It'll separate from the knob gear. The pressure plate will just continue to apply pressure. It'll actually be more pressure because it's been pulled to the left. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Conceivably, no one's trying to turn the knob anyway. Not that that would matter much, but then when you release, everything relaxes, and that metal plate, which was bent a little bit, bent a little bit, pushing on the knob shaft, that would imply that there's some kind of fitting that has failed. That would explain where the play came from. The play would come from, and I'm looking right inside the yellow gear here and spinning it and looking at it, well, would there be something that screws down and locks? Like I can sort of see something down there. No. No. Typically, again, you would not use a plastic part. And I mean, it does happen, but you put a set screw down there, you can't access it, and a set screw relying on plastic parts, that's not effective. Of course, this thing's not effective anymore. So I would tend to make slots in the yellow gear and then have a fitting slide into the slot. Is that what we're looking at right down there? I mean, it's hard for me to tell you what to look at, but if you look along the center line of the shaft, the main tuning shaft, where it goes through the yellow gear, right there, kind of in the gear side of things, there's a little nubbin down there. What is that? But then the metal plate is in the middle too, so how would that enter into it? The metal plate, you'd want the metal plate to be fused to the, would you want the metal plate? Want the metal plate, well, you'd want the gear, the metal plate, and the one side of the clutch to all move together to the left when you push the button. It'd be that the so if that's the case, if it's going to pulling the yellow gear should pull the metal plate and pull the clutch apart, you need a mechanical arrangement to hold that all together when you apply pressure on the yellow gear. Now you just screw it in somehow, or is it like a bayonet lock? It kind of looks like that, doesn't it? It looks like a bayonet. If you know what I mean, those connectors we all use in our shops, I've forgotten the name of them now. Bayonet. Bayonet connector. What is that little nubbin? See, the problem here is, I come up with a fix. My fix could destroy this thing. It's already in a sad shape. You can't tune anything. The radio's not tuning right now. The gear is spinning freely over the shaft. Well, you would expect too, coming from the metal plate, or more from that rubber clutch, if there's some kind of fingers or something that grab on the yellow gear that we can't see. When it's put together, these fingers come into place. How would they disappear? How would they fail? If they're metal, they're not going to fail. And if they're sliding into fittings in the yellow gear, which we are having trouble seeing, if that were to fail in its entirety, well, the yellow gear would be falling all over the place. We'd know it. Jeepers creepers, the simplest thing in the world, and I cannot sort this thing out. So one option here is just to glue the living daylights out of it with epoxy. Epoxy that thing up. Pour it in there between the metal plate and the yellow gear. Pour it in. I hate that idea. First of all, if it doesn't work, boy, are you screwed then. Secondly, what's going to keep it from dripping and running all over the place? I can't take the parts out. I can't take the parts out. Can I? Can I take all this out? Can I take the whole shebang out of there and look at it? Oh my gosh, I don't think so. I think that would involve removing the entire pointer assembly with the buttons and pointer assembly, and I don't think that's going to happen. What am I missing in this thing? Now, a number of you may have made all kinds of comments on these videos as I've been doing this. You may have put out numerous ideas, including some good ones, and I am not availing myself of them, which you might find a little bit frustrating. But there are good reasons for me not trying to do this work based on comments on videos. Holy smokes! Huh. There's nothing whatsoever in the service manual about this. No comments, no diagrams, no nothing. Well, what if the problem is I'm going at this totally backwards? It's the clutch that is shifted on the shaft. What if that's the case? What if I got this whole thing backwards? It's the clutch. It's this set screw has come loose and the whole clutch has slid to the right. And if I were to jam it, well, is it loose on the shaft? Look at how corroded the shaft is. Well, I can stick a tool down into that screw and see how tight it is. Now, if the screw were really loose, the whole clutch would spin on the shaft. Plus, the play I was experiencing from the front knob would probably come from the if the loose set screw were trying to account for the play in the tuning that's been here the whole time, then that means it would be really loose. I don't think it's loose at all. I highly doubt any of that is the case. Well, maybe that's the solution though. What if I forget what's gone wrong? What if I loosen that set screw, push, drive hard the clutch mechanism to the left to pin harder against the yellow gear? It just doesn't seem to make sense to me at all. Look at the rubber clutch they put in this thing. They didn't put it in there for me to look at and talk all around. It's in there to separate and to connect again. It's got to be to enable this yellow gear operation, to separate the knob when the buttons are being pushed. Otherwise you have a knob spinning on the front of the radio. You know what? They probably had an argument in the design office about why bother with all that? Just let the knob spin. Oh, we can't let the knob spin. We gotta put something in there. This is what I've come up with. A crazy Guggenheim system here. Have I seen everything there is to see? Am I not seeing something? Let me move this just a little bit this way. Okay. Wow. Now we're kind of looking where that one side of the metal plate meets up with the yellow gear. Let's push the button here. So you can see the yellow gear being pulled. We already know the pull seems to be reduced from what it should be. The yellow gear is rocking a little bit. It's not sliding perfectly back on the shaft. There's some play in it. Looks like it's releasing pressure on the metal metal plate, but the metal plate is held in place at the bottom by the tuning knob shaft. That's why you're getting that tipping action. You can also see a gap opening at the bottom where the yellow gear presses against the metal plate. Wait a minute, what's that I see there? I see something. What do I see there? So right at the bottom is hard. Maybe I can point to it. Just maybe I can point to it. I see something in there. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's almost completely inaccessible to me the way I have the camera and the lights. So I'm nowhere near pointing to it. I'm trying to guide my hand in the camera image. Let me turn this knob a little bit here. Okay, so the thing I'm looking at is not moving. Wait a cotton picking second. Wait a second. Yeah. So for a minute I thought like there's a collar down between the metal plate and the yellow gear, part of the yellow gear. It's a fairly wide collar there. At the bottom of the collar is a piece, kind of, I don't know what it's doing. It's kind of, you know, it could be, you know, I'm looking at a camera here, that the piece is actually something way behind the gear in the radio, like a wire, piece of wire going by. Is that what I'm seeing? Is this the piece of wire? No. I'm seeing something I can't identify. Be the kind of thing which would lock that plate to the wheel. So let's consider the other thing too. The clutch will only separate if something pulls it apart. Even if you take the pressure off it, they wouldn't really separate. It's got to be drawn back, especially when it was new, the rubber was soft. You have to draw it back a distance to bring it out of contact. It'd be a tiny distance. That seems to be what we're working with here. And then what exactly is between the metal plate and the clutch plate? So there's, well, is that a rubber fitting? Is that another piece of rubber? You know what this could be? That could be, it's black. That could be a piece of rubber. A similar, oh, it doesn't make sense. It's similar to the rubber in the clutch. So you apply pressure with the yellow gear through the metal plate into this black rubber piece that then pushes on the clutch. So what good is the clutch? Why the big clutch? That's the simplest thing in the world, and I cannot figure it out. It's really, you would think surely doesn't require this kind of approach. There must be better approaches, but you know, this is what was thought up, and apparently they got it to work right up until a while ago, some time ago. Get a piece break off, fall out. Can I touch that black mysterious piece there? Okay, so this might bump the camera, or I don't know. Can I get in there? My tool angle. I've got a tool, just the perfect angle on it. Where is it? I think I can probably get this to go in right down, and feel that. Ooh. Yeah, this is difficult. I'm looking in the camera shot. It's very difficult to know what that is. To know for sure I'm touching the right thing and feeling it. Yeah, it's going the wrong way. Okay, I gotta use my own eyes here a little bit. Let me separate them here. Okay, so my tool can, oh, that's pretty interesting. I can separate them and see what's going on. Okay. Not much to this metal plate. Was that a little pop? Where did that pop just now? It's very interesting. If you look at the knob gear sticking there, when I apply pressure, the pressure comes off the plate, and that that allows the gear to move more to the left. Is that the intended operation? Because how can you move the yellow gear to the left without really dragging this knob gear forward, or relying on the flexibility of the plate? How flexible is that plate? How flexible are you? Pretty flexible. Oh, wait a minute. Am I flexing the... I'm not really flexing the plate. I think I'm tipping it. There's a lot of play in that yellow gear. Look back at the left side of it. There's a lot of play in it. It's very hard to look in this image. Okay, so how about that? Can I separate that black piece from the well, it's not black. It's just black because it's dark in there. Separate them enough to see, like, why can't I move this yellow gear way out of the way? Like there's room to move back here, back somewhere here. I can't steer my tool and look in the camera. There's a lot of play right in here, but it won't go because of the finger shaft. If we could separate it further, I can make more observations. Up in here. So now is that a finger-like structure I'm looking at again? I can't tell you what I'm looking at. It's another half hour of staring at this thing. So simple. So another thing that's possible, it's just possible, the rubber pieces in the rubber clutch have shrunk. And their dimension has changed a bit, and that is what's causing this whole problem. I don't think that's terribly likely. We've got to see what that piece is, the black piece in there. What exactly is it? And what exactly is it doing? So I'm going to stop the camera, stick my eyeballs in there. I have to move the camera away and all that stuff. And just look on my own. And see if I can figure something out. Oh, I did get somewhere in just a minute here. Now I'm going to try to get this camera where... Wow, this camera is very hot. Whew. Noticed that before. So what I did was, I manually pushed this back, way back. It's so hard to do. See if I can do it now. In the groove. There. Is that really where it's supposed to go? How did I manage to do that? What happened to the finger? So that's the finger. It should be snapping forward, right? Because I don't have a button depressed. Well, let's separate it again. Look what we see. So now I got to move that metal plate a little bit. I feel like a dentist at this point. Ah, look. Is that little yellow fingers in there sticking out? So the little yellow fingers down on the bottom there, down here. A part that is supposed to pass through the metal plate here and engage firmly with the what am I doing here? With this. And it's those fingers which have worn out, given out, and broken off, or are dislodged. They're not in the right, not dislodged, but things have rotated so that. Well, no, wait a minute now. You're gonna pull this back, like I've done right now. And you're gonna spin that. No, not that. You're gonna spin that thing. And then you're going to let go. They're going to want to re-engage exactly in that spot. They're not going to want to have an arrangement where the gears can, fail to engage and they sit on top of each other till you turn something a little bit and then they pop into place. You can't have that. That's what would happen down below where the potentially where the yellow gears meet up with the tuning knob shaft. You could have a situation like that. So that would mean too, if I don't know what it would mean. How else could that clutch operate other than being pulled back by what I'm doing to the yellow gear? And then again, what's it clutching? Okay, so with the gear back, let me separate the clutch. If I can. Yeah, maybe I gotta come in through here. So you see, if the yellow gear moves back that far, disengages with the knob gear, then this metal plate is really... Is that the spring that's supposed to pull it all back in place? That metal plate is supposed to be the spring. It would work much more like a spring if the left side of the clutch were fused to it and fused to the yellow gear and pull the whole assembly to the left. There's no, and then the shaft is going to spin, but because the rubber clutch is apart, the spin won't be delivered to the metal plate or the yellow gear, and therefore won't be delivered to the knob. Okay, so if that's really the case, that something has happened, how do you attach? How do you attach the yellow plastic to the clutch? How would that ever be done? Now you're applying tension on it. It would also mean that one of the purposes of the metal plate is to cause spring action to drive the clutch closed tight. That's actually the clutch spring. In that case, now that metal plate has a dual purpose. One is it's holding the two plastic gears together, the yellow gears, and it's also, because it's pushing on the knob shaft, that's crazy. It applies a spring pressure against the clutch. So I think the spring pressure on the clutch would come from the finger way back here. Because there's just insufficient pressure. Okay, so let's I've already done this. I've raised the pressure. It didn't help. Try it again. Okay, so we assume that there's insufficient pressure. I'm feeling the pressure. That's a lot of extra pressure now. Nothing happening at all. Why is it not engaging there? I buggered something up already. I haven't even done anything. What did I do? You know what I did? I separated the parts farther apart than they have been before. Then I let them settle back. If there's some kind of structure in there, kind of slipping past the metal plate, and I've separated them and then rotated things and then let them go back together. They've gone back together in a way that causes the yellow gear to stay to the left. And missing the drive. So much for the metal plate. Pulling or making those gears come together. Well, what is keeping them apart now? Okay, I'm going to push the push button and let it snap out. Didn't do anything, I don't think. Now, what all just happened there? That suddenly it's okay. Started spinning the yellow gear a little bit on the shaft, and it seems to have relaxed into position. And the yellow gear should be driving the clutch right now. I can't see any repair for this other than just throwing epoxy in there everywhere, and that's a one-way trip. If it doesn't work, then the wreckage is on me. Son of a gun. Wow, okay. Well, a lot happening here. Maybe I'm going to put a warning at the beginning of this video that so just, yeah. Warning. Yeah. I gotta stop here. I don't know what to do. I need more ideas. I'm gonna go look at my coffee cup for ideas.